Hey, welcome to Tabletop Skirmish Games. I'm Lee, and in this video I'll show you how I use contrast paints to create the flame effect on my Scions of the Flame Warcry warband. So for this effect I used 3 contrast paints, a Yanden yellow, Griffhound orange and Flesh Tearers red. The brush I used was the Army Painter War Game character brush. So let's get started with our Immolator. And here he is, this crazy guy, completely covered in flames and on fire, and this is a great model to try this effect out on. And to start with, I do a coat of the yellow contrast paint, and I've kind of divided this miniature up into 3 sections because this is a wet blend technique, you don't want it to dry out. So I make sure I'm just covering the section that's kind of large enough, but not too large that it will dry before I get on to the next paint. And I'm putting this on quite generously and making sure to end the brush strokes where I want most of the paint to pool, and that's in the recesses. And I'm going right underneath, covering it all there. And I'm trying to just leave a tiny bit of white where the flames meet the arms and the different parts of the armour and robes and everything like that. In this video I'll use 5 of the main models from the warband to just show you how I've done it on the large flames and all the different sizes, right from the very small ones up to this big guy who's completely covered. So you can skip through if you're working on a particular model, or just watch all 5 and see how I did it. Here we are, I'm almost finished on this section now, and I'm just making sure, working that paint and moving it round. The contrast paint's really good for that. And now moving on to the orange, and so I've covered the whole flame with the yellow, and now with the orange I'm looking to cover about 60 to 65%, and I'm just working that into the yellow and blending it in. On the smaller flames around the legs I was being quite patchy, but when we get to these larger ones, I'm really looking to cover from the top of the flame 65% down to where the flame starts and where it meets the skin. So you can change this ratio. The main thing is getting that yellow over 100% of it, and then it's up to you how orange and red you want it. I wanted to go for quite an orange and red colour theme here, and so I went with 60 to 65% with the orange. But you could do a lot less, maybe 50%, and you'd still get a really nice effect. But it's just really experimenting and looking at the colour scheme you want to go with your miniatures, and then deciding how much of the yellow or orange or red you want on the flames. So that's the yellow and then orange done, and I'm keep moving and working it and making sure it's still wet now, ready for when I put on the red paint. And with the red I'm looking at about 30% coverage now, and again working from the tops of the flames all the way down, and then with the smaller ones where they kind of start from the legs, I'm just looking at where the tips of the flames are working out and just putting little bits of red and dotting it around. As the robes are quite orangey red on this whole warband, and with this miniature doesn't have many robes, so I wanted to keep that colour really bold, so that 30% red on the flames is quite strong, and that's going to really tie him in with the rest of the warband. And once I've got all 3 colours on and blended together, I just go back to a little bit of yellow or a little bit of orange paint and just keep working and blending it. If there's too obvious a line between 2 of the colours, then I pick one and just work it up. And now, rather than spreading down, I kind of work from the base of the flame all the way up to the top, blending as I go. The final stage for the flames now is just to use some contrast black Templar, and we want to kind of signify the idea that the flames turn into smoke. So for this we use a tiny bit of paint, and just at the very tips of the flames just add a little bit of that black Templar, and that's going to give a really nice finish to the flames and create a kind of semi-realistic look. And that's it, the flame's complete, and this gives a nice battle ready tabletop standard flame for our miniatures. And here you can see I used that same effect all across the body on the front, and I used the pictures from the Catacombs book as my guide. Now we'll move on to the Brazen Champion and show you how I did it on that really large flame that comes out from the axe. So to start with, it's exactly the same effect of getting that yellow on, and you can see I'm kind of dotting around when I first apply the paint just to get most of the paint into the recesses where I want most of that yellow to build up. And then just make sure I spread it around and get it in all the different areas, remembering to leave just a tiny bit of white where the flame meets the axe. And I use the same ratio here with the orange going on next, looking at about 60 to 65%, working from the top of the flame down towards the base. Then while that yellow and orange is still wet, I take the red contrast paint, and then I'm looking to cover about 30% from the tip of the flame down towards the base. And then as I get down to that 30% mark, I'm just blending it with the orange a little bit, and then making sure I go over the smaller kind of flames that flick off from the sides as well. So I almost treat those as separate little flames and keeping that ratio the same for those. The great thing about these contrast paints is if you think you've put too much orange or red, you can just take a wet brush and wick some of it away, and then add a little bit more of the yellow, and you can kind of bring the kind of dark tones down, or you can add more dark and then blend where the joins meet. So it's really good for blending the two colours together, and this kind of yellow, orange and red is just a perfect trio of colours for this technique. And then we finish this off with the contrast Black Templar, just as before, and just on the very tip of the flame, and on the little flames that come away from the side, we're just putting a tiny dot of black to represent the flame turning to smoke. And that's our Brazen Champion complete, and you can see I've done the same effect on the flame that comes from his head there, and it's done in exactly the same way. Next we'll do the Blazing Lord, and this flame's a lot smaller here, but the technique's the same. It's just a full coat of yellow followed by 60 to 65% orange and then 30% red over the whole thing. And you can see how quick and easy this technique is with these contrast paints. And although it's not like going to win any competitions for painting, it's definitely going to give a really fast, effective look, and perfect for anything, just for like having a tabletop battle ready warband that you can get painted up quite quickly and on the table ready to play. I can definitely recommend these contrast paints, and I think they're really good if you're a beginner like me to get some nice effects that you're really happy with, and it certainly builds your confidence if you wanted to move on to some more advanced techniques. But to be fair, I'm really happy with how these look, and I think for the amount of warbands I've got to paint, this is the way forward for me. There we go, that's our third model complete, and hopefully this has given you a good idea of how to do the different size flames. I painted the Inferno Priest in exactly the same way, and you can see on the stuff there how using different layers of one paint, the yellow in this case, had a really nice blending effect too. And here's our Fireborn with just that tiny flame on the end of the mace there. If you'd like to see how I painted all these miniatures, then there's some more videos on my YouTube channel, so check those out. I've also got videos on how to make the bases and how to fix the miniature to the bases if you chose to paint them separately. I'll put links to all the paints I use in the description below, and there'll be affiliate links. They don't cost you anything extra. In fact, they're going to save you money, and for every sale made through the links, I get a small commission that's going to help me develop the channel, and I'm really grateful for that support. Thanks so much for watching. Please like if you liked the video, subscribe for more Warcry content like this, and don't forget to hit that notification bell to join me next time on Tabletop Skirmish Games.